Hey everyone, did you know that over 90% of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button? If you enjoy our content, take a second to subscribe. It's free and it really helps us keep bringing you great stories every day. My name is Marcus, and for the past 7 years, I thought I had built a stable life. Simple, maybe, but secure. I'm 35, work long shifts at a packaging warehouse, and I've never minded getting my hands dirty. I believed in loyalty, hard work, and second chances, which is why I didn't hesitate when I met Elena. She was older than me by 9 years, a woman who'd been through a rough divorce and had a troubled teenage son. I didn't walk into the situation blind. I knew she came with baggage. I just never expected that baggage to crush me from the inside out. When I met Elena, she had this calm about her, this softness I mistook for warmth. She told me all about her past, how her ex-husband had left her penniless and bitter, how her son Darren was struggling in school and angry at the world. I admired her for surviving. I respected her resilience. Maybe I was naive, but I wanted to be the man who gave her peace, a fresh start. So when she said she wanted stability and someone to rely on, I stepped in willingly. We got married a year later, and I moved into her house. Well, technically it became our house because I paid off the remainder of the mortgage within 2 years using my savings and a small inheritance from my mother. My name was on the title. I handled the repairs, the bills, the food, the late night runs to the pharmacy whenever Darren got sick. I poured everything I had into that home, into them. Darren never liked me, but I chalked it up to teenage angst. He was 16 when I entered the picture, and no one wants to be told what to do by a man they barely know. Still, I tried to bond with him. I offered to help with his college applications, paid for his driving lessons, even got him a used car for his 19th birthday. He accepted everything, but with this passive-aggressive air, like he was doing me a favor by letting me help. The turning point came slowly, almost invisibly. I didn't notice it at first because I was too tired to look for signs. I was working night shifts that lasted into the morning, barely sleeping, and often eating whatever cold leftovers were left in the fridge. Elena said it was just a busy time for her too. Doctor's appointments, errands, always something. She began asking me for access to our joint account more often, claiming it was easier for her to handle some of the bills. I didn't think twice about it. I trusted her. I thought we were a team. But teams don't throw each other out like garbage. It happened on a rainy Thursday morning. I remember because the sky was still dark, even though it was close to 9 a.m. I had just gotten off a brutal 12-hour shift. My back was sore, my eyes burning, and all I wanted was to collapse in bed for a few hours. But as I pulled into the driveway, I saw something that made me freeze. All of my belongings, my clothes, toolbox, gym bag, even framed photos were sitting in black garbage bags next to the trash bin. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she was spring cleaning and accidentally grabbed the wrong stuff. But then the front door opened, and Elena stood there, arms crossed, face hard. "You can't stay here anymore, Marcus," she said. No explanation, no warning, just a cold, clipped sentence. "What are you talking about?" I asked, too stunned to be angry. "What's going on?" She shook her head like I was some stray dog she had grown tired of feeding. "You've been abusive. I'm done walking on eggshells. Darren and I deserve peace." I felt like the ground split under me. "Abusive? Elena, I've never— what are you even saying?" "I'm not doing this with you," she said. "Leave now or I'll call the police." She shut the door, just like that. I stood in the rain, soaked and humiliated, watching the woman I had sacrificed years of my life for turn her back on me. I waited there for an hour. No police came. No apology followed. Eventually, I loaded what I could into my truck and drove off. For 2 days, I stayed in a motel on the edge of town, living off vending machine snacks and fast food. I tried calling her, texting her, nothing. The few responses I got were brief and threatening, telling me to stay away, that I'd be hearing from her lawyer. Still trying to make sense of it all, I called my bank to check our finances. That's when the second gut punch landed. The joint account we'd shared for years was empty. Not low. Empty. Thousands of dollars gone. Drained in the last 3 weeks. And all of it withdrawn or spent using her debit card or transferred to an account under Darren's name. That's when I realized this wasn't just a sudden outburst. This was a plan. They had orchestrated this. The betrayal cut deeper the more I uncovered. Elena had filed a temporary restraining order against me, claiming emotional abuse. Lies. All lies. She knew how to work the system, had probably been consulting someone on how to make this all look legitimate. But what she didn't know, what neither of them realized, was that I kept every document. Every receipt, every payment I'd made on the house, the mortgage closure papers, the deed with my name on it. I wasn't about to roll over and let them rob me blind. I reached out to an old friend from high school, Anthony, who had become a lawyer. We hadn't talked in years, but when I told him what happened, he told me to come in right away. He looked over my documents, read the restraining order claims, and gave me the first bit of hope I'd had in days. "They messed up," he said. "Legally, this house is yours. And if what you're telling me is true, they're the ones in for a rude awakening." But revenge wasn't what I wanted. At least not then. I just wanted my life back, my dignity, my home. Anthony filed a motion to dispute the restraining order. It would take weeks, maybe even months, to sort it all out. But I was ready to fight. Every day I documented everything: bank records, texts, statements from coworkers who could vouch for my whereabouts during the times Elena claimed I was unstable. Still, there was something nagging at me. The timing of it all. Why now? Why after so many years? The answer came from an unexpected place. A neighbor who used to borrow my tools stopped me outside the courthouse one day. He recognized me and pulled me aside. "I don't want to get involved," he said quietly, "but I saw something weird a few weeks ago. Elena and Darren had some man over, real estate agent. They were walking around the property, taking pictures, talking numbers." My stomach dropped. They were planning to sell the house. My house. They thought I'd just vanish, that I'd go down quietly and let them cash in on years of my work. But what they didn't count on, what they never even considered, was that I wasn't the same person they thought they could manipulate. Something had shifted in me. They may have broken the version of me that believed in love and loyalty without question, but what they created in return was a man who would not be taken advantage of again. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The days after that neighbor's warning were filled with equal parts clarity and anger. I finally understood that this wasn't a heat-of-the-moment betrayal. It was strategic, cold, calculated. Elena and Darren hadn't just decided one day that they were tired of me. They had been laying the groundwork to remove me entirely and cash in on the life I had built. That realization hardened something inside me. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to make sure the truth came out and that they'd have to face the consequences of their own deception. Anthony worked fast. We compiled every bit of proof I had: financial records, home ownership documents, text messages between Elena and me, even the messages she'd sent threatening to call the police if I returned. He reached out to a judge to petition for an emergency hearing to lift the restraining order temporarily, citing my legal claim to the property and the likelihood that Elena was trying to sell the home fraudulently. It didn't happen overnight. There were delays, procedural barriers, and moments I wanted to give up. But I kept reminding myself of everything I'd done to support that family. Every hour of overtime, every sacrifice, every moment I turned the other cheek when Darren disrespected me. I wasn't about to let those years be erased by a pair of greedy manipulators. Then something happened that almost pushed me over the edge. I got a call from a credit card company I didn't recognize. They wanted to confirm a few suspicious purchases. I told them I didn't have an account with them. Turns out someone had applied using my name and social security number. When I pressed them for details, they mentioned the card had been mailed to my house, the house I wasn't allowed to enter. It hit me like a punch to the chest. They weren't just trying to kick me out and sell the house. They were trying to ruin my name. Financially, legally, personally. They wanted to leave me with nothing, maybe even damage my credit enough that I couldn't fight back. Anthony helped me report it as identity theft. We flagged the fraud and added extra monitoring to my accounts. Still, I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about how someone I loved, someone I had trusted so completely, could be capable of such methodical cruelty. And not just her, but her son, too. A kid I had tried to raise, support, mentor. What kind of conversations had they been having behind my back all these years? But the fog started to lift when we finally got a court date. It was a temporary hearing meant to assess whether the restraining order was valid and whether I had any right to access the home. I walked into that courtroom with every piece of evidence neatly organized, wearing a suit that barely fit after years of warehouse labor. I was nervous but focused. Elena sat on the other side of the room, dressed in beige, calm as ever, like this was just a formality. Darren wasn't with her. Maybe he didn't want to face me, or maybe he thought this didn't concern him. When the judge asked her to present her case, she spoke softly, convincingly, said I had mood swings, that I yelled without reason, and created an unsafe environment. No real examples, just vague emotional language. Then it was my turn. I handed over documents showing my ownership of the house. Bank statements that showed I'd paid every major bill for the past 5 years. Screenshots of our text history that contradicted her story. Even the fraudulent credit application. When I finished, the judge was quiet for a long time. Then he said the words I'll never forget. Based on this evidence, the restraining order will be temporarily lifted pending further review. Mr. Marcus is granted legal re-entry to the property under scheduled conditions. It wasn't a full victory, but it was a foot back in the door. Literally. That evening, escorted by a sheriff's deputy, I walked back into my house. Elena wasn't there. The locks had been changed, of course, but under the judge's orders, I was allowed to re-enter and collect evidence and inspect the condition of the property. I wasn't prepared for what I found. The place looked like a party house. Fast food wrappers everywhere, empty liquor bottles in the kitchen sink. Darren's room had basically expanded into mine. My clothes were thrown into garbage bags and shoved into the hallway closet. The bed I'd shared with Elena had new sheets, ones I didn't recognize. On the nightstand, a man's watch that didn't belong to me sat next to a phone charger. I felt like a ghost walking through someone else's life. Back in the kitchen, I found a printed contract from a local real estate agency. The date? Just 5 days earlier. Elena had already scheduled a listing and an open house set for the following weekend. She didn't just want to kick me out. She wanted to erase every trace of me and turn my home into a profit. All without even waiting for the court decision? I sent pictures of everything to Anthony. He was livid. Said it bordered on criminal fraud since she had no legal authority to sell the house on her own. We worked fast. Anthony sent a cease and desist letter to the real estate agency and filed an emergency injunction to halt any sale of the property. That forced Elena to come clean to the agency, and word must have gotten back to her quickly because the next morning I got a text. "You're unbelievable," she wrote. "Why can't you just walk away? You've made this so much harder than it needed to be." Harder? After everything she'd done, she still played the victim. That's when I realized Elena and Darren had convinced themselves they were the ones who deserved that house, that money, the comfortable life I'd built. They saw me as an obstacle, not a person. It made me rethink everything. I used to ask myself what I did wrong, whether I missed some red flag or pushed them away somehow. But now I understood the truth. Some people don't appreciate kindness. They see empathy as a weakness. And when they find someone willing to carry the weight, they start stacking bricks. I spent the next week preparing for the full court hearing. This time, I was determined to not just defend myself, but to hold them accountable. Anthony helped me file for a formal financial audit of our joint accounts and a claim for damages related to the identity theft. The judge agreed to freeze any large transfers from the accounts until a full investigation could be completed. But there was still one thing missing, a motive, something that tied all of this together. And then, one night while going through old emails, I found it. A message from Elena to her sister left open on our shared email account from months ago. I had never seen it because it had been archived. In it, she wrote, "He has no idea. Once we get the house in our name, we can finally move forward. Darren says he found a way to make sure Marcus won't be able to come back. It's almost too easy." Almost too easy. That was the final nail. I printed the email and handed it over to Anthony. It wasn't just unethical. It was potential evidence of conspiracy, proof that this had been premeditated. In the weeks that followed, the court ordered a financial review. They found that Darren had been transferring money out of our joint account and into his own using mobile banking access Elena gave him. thousands of dollars used for gambling, electronics, and even a trip to Miami. Money I had worked for. But justice doesn't come all at once. It comes in waves, quiet, steady, inevitable. And I could feel the tide starting to turn. When I looked in the mirror now, I saw someone different. Not broken, not defeated. Someone who had been through betrayal and come out wiser, harder, but still standing. This wasn't just about getting my house back. This was about reclaiming my life. And I wasn't done yet. It took months to get to the final court date. But during that time, I changed. Not just legally, I changed personally, emotionally, in ways I hadn't expected. At first, I was driven by shock, by anger. But once that passed, something deeper took root. Determination, clarity. I wasn't just fighting to get my house back. I was confronting the fact that I had let myself believe in something that wasn't real for too long. I started going back to the gym, focused on eating right, sleeping better, building my strength. The job was still exhausting, but I stopped picking up every extra shift they threw at me. I needed my energy now for the legal fight ahead, not just for work. I kept a notebook with everything that happened. Calls, emails, strange behaviors, even the way Darren's friends suddenly stopped saying hello when they saw me around town. I documented it all, not just for court, but to remind myself of the truth. Because sometimes when you've loved someone deeply, your mind wants to forget the betrayal. I didn't want to forget. I wanted to grow beyond it. The court day finally arrived on a cold morning. I wore the same suit I'd worn to our wedding reception. I didn't do it to be dramatic. It was just the only one I owned, and maybe somewhere in my mind, I wanted to reclaim it. That suit didn't belong to those memories anymore. It belonged to the man I was becoming. Elena walked in with a high-priced attorney. She looked calm, collected, like someone who thought the worst was behind her. Darren followed behind, wearing a dress shirt with sneakers. He didn't look at me. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he didn't care. I didn't know anymore. The judge greeted us with a solemn expression. This was a continuation of the case, an assessment of financial misconduct, ownership disputes, and the fraudulent use of legal documentation to remove me from my own home. It was a lot, but I was ready. Anthony presented everything clearly. The house title with my name, the financial records showing I had paid off the mortgage, the email Elena had written to her sister, which the judge read twice, silently. Then came the identity theft investigation results. It was irrefutable. A credit card had been opened in my name, sent to my address, and activated without my knowledge. And purchases were traced to Darren's online accounts. Elena's attorney tried to argue that I had given them permission, that I had contributed jointly to the household, and should consider the money as shared. But when the judge asked for proof, they didn't have any. No signed agreements, no recorded permissions, just assumptions. Then it was Elena's turn. She tried to frame herself as a woman cornered by a controlling husband. She cried. Quiet, deliberate tears. She said she'd never meant to hurt me, only protect her son. That I had changed. That I worked too much and didn't communicate. I listened, calm and composed. Because now I knew. Lies sound loudest when the truth is closing in. The judge asked her directly, "Did you intend to sell the house while Mr. Marcus was legally restricted from entering the property?" She hesitated. That was all it took. The judge leaned forward and spoke with a tone that silenced the room. This court finds that the actions taken to remove Mr. Marcus from the home were executed under misleading and possibly fraudulent pretenses. Based on the evidence provided, full ownership of the property is awarded to Mr. Marcus. The restraining order is lifted. Furthermore, this court is referring the matter of financial misconduct and identity theft to the appropriate authorities for investigation. Elena froze. Darren's jaw tightened, but I felt something inside me ease for the first time in months. Not satisfaction, just peace. When we exited the courtroom, Elena tried to speak to me. She stepped toward me like we could still talk things out, like maybe some apology would fix it all, but I kept walking. There was nothing left to say. Darren wouldn't look me in the eye. And part of me hurt for that kid I once tried to help. But he made his choices. And choices have consequences. It took 2 weeks to get the paperwork finalized, but eventually I changed the locks. The house was mine again, empty, quiet, but finally clean of all the manipulation and lies that once filled it. The first night I spent there alone, I didn't sleep in the old bed. I brought a sleeping bag and camped out in the living room. Just me, a cup of tea, and silence. It wasn't just about reclaiming a house. It was about closing a chapter. I began going through everything they left behind: clothes, shoes, furniture, even photos. I boxed it all and had it delivered to a storage unit in their name. I didn't want a single trace of them in my home anymore. One day I found something small, a card from Darren's younger years, maybe 6 or 7, back when he had drawn a childish Happy Father's Day message with crayon. It stopped me for a moment. I remembered that boy. He had tried once, or maybe I had just hoped he had. Either way, I placed the card in a drawer, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder of what blind hope can cost you. Word spread around town. People stopped me to say they'd heard about what happened. Some expressed shock, others admitted they had always felt something was off about Elena. One neighbor confessed she had overheard conversations between Elena and a man who wasn't me, months before I got kicked out. I didn't want to get involved, she said, but I see now, maybe I should have. Maybe. But it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't angry. I was just done. Eventually, the authorities followed up. Darren was charged with financial fraud and identity theft. Elena faced a civil suit for her role in accessing the accounts without my knowledge. I didn't press for jail time. I just wanted what was rightfully mine. But the law took its own course. They would have to answer for their actions. Some friends asked me if I ever thought about dating again. I told them I wasn't even thinking about love. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. First, I had to build trust with myself again, relearn who I was without them. I started volunteering at a local mentoring program, helping young men find direction, avoid mistakes. Maybe a part of me wanted to give what I couldn't give Darren, or maybe I just wanted to turn pain into purpose. The last part of this journey wasn't revenge. It wasn't about winning. It was about healing. I painted the house, got new furniture, tore down the old photos, the decorations Elena picked. It looked different now, yes, but it felt different too. It felt like mine. Fully. Finally. I stood in the yard one morning, coffee in hand, sun rising over the driveway, and thought about how far I'd come. Not just legally, but emotionally, mentally. They thought they were stealing a house, but what they really tried to steal was my sense of peace, my belief in myself. They failed. So here I am, Marcus, 35 years old, betrayed by the people I once called family, but standing tall, stronger, wiser, unbroken. And if you're watching this, wondering if you'll ever get back on your feet after being lied to, manipulated, or thrown away, know this. You will. It might take time. It might hurt more than you imagined. But the truth? It has a way of rising. And when it does, there's no force strong enough to bury it again.